Hello dear friends, and welcome to a new episode of our program Enrich Your Language. Dear friends, we are accustomed to having two parts in this program. The first part is entitled English Tales and the second one is English Idioms. Dear friends, in the first part we're going to deal with a new tale. And the tale we're going to deal with today is The Prince and the Seedling. In this tale, we're going to deal with a new events and we're going to deal with a prince who is strained somehow, who deals fiercely with other people, and in the end of the tale, he is going to learn a lesson and become a good man. Dear friends, let's start. The Prince and the Seedlings. Yes. Once upon a time, in a faraway country, there lived a king. As you see in the picture, there was a king in a faraway country who lived in, the person or the king lived in a faraway country, and this king lived with his son. He had a son. He had a son called Parrot. So, Parrot was a prince. So, dear friends, what do we call a king's son? So, a king's son is usually called prince. And what about the king's daughter? The king's daughter is a princess. And the king's wife is called a queen. And what do we call the people who live around in the king's palace? Yes, they are called courtiers. So the king's son is a prince, the king's daughter is a princess, and the king's wife is a queen. Let's go back to see what happened to this king. Yes, in a faraway country there lived a king who had a son called Parrot. Does he have a problem with that son? Yes, let's see. He loved his son but was very worried about his behavior. So we have the word worried, and worried, yes, is the British pronunciation. So worried, British English, and the American pronunciation is worried. So both of them are right, but worried American and worried British English. Worried British English. He was very worried about his behavior. Why? Yes, let's see. Prince Parrot was a young boy. Prince Parrot was a young boy, but he had a very fierce temper. He had a very fierce temper. Fierce means angry and violent. Angry and violent. And the noun is fierceness. The noun is fierceness. So, fierce is an adjective. And the noun is fierceness. And it means, yes, it means violent and angry. But he had a very fierce temper. Temper. Yes. Temper is a state of mind. Temper is the state of mind. Sometimes it means, yes, being angry. The king thought. Yes. What does this word mean? And in which tense is it? Yes, thought is a past simple of think. So we have think, thought. Think, thought, thought. Yes. He thought. What do I do? Most of Most of my courtiers are afraid of him. What do I do? How can I solve this problem? Most of my courtiers, most of the people in the palace are afraid of him. Sometimes I'm afraid of his temper. So, the king was afraid of the prince's temper, and he was worried about him. So, what did he do to make him a good person? Yes, let's see. One day, his minister advised, Your Majesty. Your Majesty? Yes, what is Your Majesty? Majesty is a title of respect. So, Majesty is a title of respect that we usually use when we talk to or about kings and queens. So, Majesty is a title of respect that we usually use to talk about or when talking about or to kings and queens. And it is similar to the title of respect, Your Highness. So, Your Majesty, Your Highness, Your Excellency, all of these are what? Are titles of respect. So, we have Your Majesty, Your Highness, and Your Excellency. Let's go back to see what happened to His Majesty. Yes, he said, Your Majesty, there is a wise sage. There is a wise sage. And the word wise is, yes, is an adjective. A person who is full of wisdom. Yes. And what about the word sage? Sage is what? Is a person, a very wise person. A very wise person. And sometimes we use that to refer to the herb that we usually use in order to flavor food. So, sage has two meanings. The first meaning is that very wise person. And the second meaning is what? Is the thing, the herb that we usually use in order to flavor food. Flavor food, yes. Flavor food. We usually flavor food with spices. And sometimes we use the verb season. Season means to add spices to the food. To add spices to the food means season the food. So, my mother, my wife, usually seasons fish or seasons the chicken before cooking. Season something or season the food means to add spices to the food. So, season is something, and we use it to refer to the four seasons we have: spring, winter, summer, and autumn. So, it has two meanings too. So, dear friends, let's go back to find what happened to the king and the sage. Yes, the minister advised the king to go to the forest. There was a wise sage in the forest just outside the city. Why? To help you, to help the king. So, the sage is a very wise person. So, he may help you. Why don't you go and ask him for advice? Why don't you go and ask him for advice? So, the minister suggested going to the sage, the wise sage. He suggested using the structure why don't you go. So why don't you, followed by infinitive, is used to express or to give a suggestion, to make a suggestion. Why don't you, let's, shall we, all of these must be followed by infinitive, and all of these can be used to express suggestion. But dear friends, we usually use how about and what about for making suggestion. But how about and what about are different. Why? Because both of them are usually followed by verb plus ing or a noun. So, if I want to suggest going to the cinema or going anywhere, so we can say, how about going to the cinema? What about going to the cinema? But, shall we, let's, why don't we, are usually used to express the same meaning, to make a suggestion, but all of them are usually followed by infinitive. So the minister wanted to make a suggestion, that's why he used the expression, why don't you go to the sage? Why don't you go to the sage? So why don't you is usually used to make a suggestion. Dear friends, did the king accept the minister's suggestion? Let's see. Why don't you go and ask him for advice? Yes. The king agreed, yes, and he went to visit the sage. So the king visited the sage, yes, on hearing the king's problem. On hearing the king's problem. When the sage heard the king's problem, the sage said, I will do all I can. I will do all I can. So the sage accepted to help the king. Send the prince to me. Send the prince to me. So the king came back home and asked his prince, his son, to go to, yes, to go to the sage. The king went back to the palace and said to the prince, son, tomorrow go to visit the sage in the forest. So the king asked the prince to visit the sage. But did the prince accept the king's request? Yes, surely. Okay, dear friends, what is a palace? A palace is a kind of home, a kind of house in which princes, princesses, kings and queens live. Okay. And what about the word forest? Forest equals the jungle, or similar to jungle, similar to wood. Okay. So the prince went immediately to the sage. As you see in the picture, the prince took his horse, yes, rode his horse to the sage, into the forest. The next day the prince set out to the forest. Yes, he left the city or the country behind and set out to the forest to meet the sage. Soon, after a short time, he reached the sage's ashram. So, what is ashram? Ashram is the place where Hindus live or decide to live far away from society, from community, in order to pray, in order to have private, special private life. So ashram is a place where Hindus decide to live far away from society. Sometimes it is used to refer to the place where Hindus go in order to say prayer. Okay, so the prince went to the sage's ashram. Yes, the place where the sage lives. Yes, the sage welcomed the prince, as you see in the picture. The sage welcomed the prince and showed him around the ashram. Oh, he showed him around the ashram. Yes. He wandered around the ashram. Yes, when they reached the backyard, garden, something like a garden, back garden, the sage showed him. The sage showed the prince the seedling of a neem plant. What is seedling? Seedling is what? Is a little plant, is a small plant. Seedling is a small plant. So, when they reached a verb in the past simple, the sage showed another verb in the past simple. The sage welcomed a verb in the past simple. And showed, yes, another verb in the past simple. So all of these verbs are in the past simple. But when do we usually use the past simple? When do we usually use the past simple? Dear friends, the past simple is a tense that we usually use to talk about past actions. Actions that happened at a specific time in the past. Sometimes we use it to talk about past habits. So the past simple is used to talk about past habits or to talk about actions happened at a specific time in the past. Okay, but how can we form the past simple? Firstly, we have to mention that we have two kinds of verbs. The first kind is regular verbs and the second is irregular verbs. If we have a regular verb, we usually add d, ed or ied to the end of it. But if we have an irregular verb, we usually use the second conjugation, the second form. Like what? Like see, so, like go, went, sleep, slept, drink, drank. So all of these verbs are irregular verbs, but the other kind is called regular verbs. And as we have just mentioned, if we have a regular verb, we usually add d, ed, or ied according to the end of the verb. So we have a verb, if we have a verb like help, so the past of it is helped, ed. If we have a verb like live, that ends in e, so the past of it is lived. So we add only d. If we have a verb like study, it ends in y, and before the y we have a consonant, so we usually omit the y and put ied instead. But if we have a verb like play, it ends in Y, and before the Y we have a vowel. So in this case, we usually add ed. Dear friends, let's go back to see what happened to the prince and the sage. Do you see that seedling? He asked. The sage asked. Do you see that seedling? Pluck one of its leaves and eat it. So the sage asked the prince some questions. Yes, he asked him the first question, which is, do you see that seedling, that small plant? Pluck one of its leaves. Yes. Pluck means to hold something, yes, in your fingers and to pull it gently. Pluck, to hold something in your fingers and to pull it gently. Sometimes we use pluck with hairs when we talk about hair. So pluck a hair to pull it off or pull it out. Sometimes we use pluck with feathers when we want to talk about birds. So pluck a feather means to pull it out or pull it off. So pluck, to pull something out or off, or to hold something and to pull it gently. This is the meaning of pluck. Dear friends, let's see what the prince did. Did he pluck the leaves? Did he eat the leaves? And why the sage asked the prince to pluck and eat the leaves of the seedling? Let's go back. Yes, hardly had the prince begun to chew. Hardly had the prince begun to chew the leaf. So he started to chew the leaf when he spat it out in disgust. So he spat, the past of spit. So spit, spat. He spat it out. Yes. Dear friends, spit. The past is a spat. And spit means to force something, food or liquid, out of your mind. To force food or liquid out of your mind. Sometimes it is used to refer to saliva. To force saliva out of your mind, this is spit. Spit, spat. The past of it is a spat. Dear friends, the prince spat the leaf out of his mind, or forced it out of his mind. Why? Because it was bitter, the opposite of sweet. So bitter, like the taste of coffee. If you have coffee without sugar, so it tastes, yes, bitter. If you have lemon without sugar, it tastes, yes, sour. So all of these are tastes. Lemon's taste is or can be considered sour. Yes, coffee without sugar is bitter. And we have a sweet and salty. If you add too much salt to food, yes, it will be salty. If you add too much sugar to food or to a drink, it will be, yes, sweet. So we have sweet, salty, bitter and sour. All of these are tastes. Dear friends, let's go back to see why the prince spat the leaf. Yes, he spat it out in disgust. So, spat is a past of, yes, the past of spit. Spit it out, yes, forced it out of his mouth. Disgust is a noun and a verb at the same time. Disgust, to make someone shocked. Or it can be used as a noun. Yes, something which is terrible, something that makes you feel terrible, yes, is a kind of disgust. What a bitter taste! What a bitter taste! He shouted in anger. So, the seedling's taste was bitter. That's why the prince spat it out. Yes. And then what happened? Yes, the plant is so bitter. I can only imagine how revolting the full-grown tree will be. So, the prince couldn't imagine how revolting the full-grown tree will be. Yes, revolting. What is revolting? Revolting is an adjective. It means to cause somebody feel horror or disgust. Means to make somebody feels horror or disgust. This is revolting, or revolt is the verb. Okay, so revolt is a verb and the adjective is revolting. Sometimes we use revolt to mean, yes, protesting against, yes, the people in power. Protesting against the people who are in power. This is revolt. And the noun is revolution. And the noun is revolution. Okay, so we have revolt means to make someone feel horror or disgust. To make someone feel horror or disgust, or to protest against the people in power. And the noun is revolution. This is the noun. Dear friends, let's go back to see what happened to that prince. How revolting the full-grown tree will be! I won't let it grow! Oh, saying this, he whipped the plant into pieces. So, the prince couldn't imagine how revolting, how disgusting the full-grown tree will be. So, he decided to end its life. He decided to rip the plant into pieces. Yes, he cut it off. So, this was the lesson that the sage wanted the prince to learn. Yes, here we have the verb grow, and we explained, we said that let is usually followed by verb infinitive, infinitive without to. Let grow, let it grow. But allow, it means allow, let means allow. But let is usually followed by a verb infinitive. But allow is usually followed by full infinitive, but let is usually followed by a bare infinitive, like the verb we have here. Let grow, let it grow, but allow it to grow. Allow it to grow. Saying this, he reaped. The verb here is in the past simple. He reaped. And take care of the pronunciation of the verb. Ripped. He ripped the plant into pieces. He cut the plant into pieces. And rip means tear. Rip and tear are the same. Rip, cut into pieces, and tear, cut into pieces. So both of the two verbs are the same. Rip and tear. In addition to that, we want to mention that tear is a noun too. Water that comes out, drops of water that comes out of our eyes when we cry. Water or drops of water that come out of our eyes when we cry. So tear is a noun, and the tear equals rip, to cut into small pieces. Let's go back to see why the prince ripped the seedling. Yes, the sage watched this in silence. The sage watched that action in silence and then said, if you, as young prince, can be so vicious, if you, as young prince, can be so vicious, okay, you are something, or you are a bad person. So, if everything is bad, we must stop its life. So, at that moment, the prince was amazed. Vicious is an adjective. It means cruel and violent. Vicious, cruel, and violent. What will you be like? What will you be like in the future? When you are a king, you too will be destroyed like the plant. Oh, it was a very good lesson. So, dear friends, when the prince ripped the plant into pieces, the man or the sage told the prince that you are a vicious person, you are a bad person, a bad young person, and if we stop the life of every bad thing, you will be destroyed, because you are bad. You are like this plant. So, we must stop your life. We must kill you. You will be, yes, the worst in the future. If something is bad, and we decide to make it better, we stop its life? No, we can't do that. We must help those people who are not good in order to be good, to be better. But it's not a solution to stop someone's life because he or she is bad. So, at that time, the prince was amazed, and he began to learn the lesson. Okay, dear friends, let's see what happened to the prince and what he said. Yes, you too will be destroyed. Yes, here we have a verb in the passive voice. Yes, it's in the future passive. Okay, The prince was shocked, was amazed, was shocked at these words. Yes, but knew them. The past of know, knew. He knew them. He learned them. The prince was shocked at these words, but knew them to be true. He learned the lesson. He said, I understand you, O wise sage. Thank you for helping me. I promise to mend my ways. I promise to mend my ways. This is an idiom. Okay. He said, I understand. A verb in the present simple. Oh, wise sage, thank you for helping me. Thank you for. All prepositions must be followed by, or should be followed by, verb plus ing or a noun, except to. Except to. To is usually followed by infinitive, and sometimes with some specific expressions we usually use verb plus ing or a noun. I promise to. Promise to. Promise is usually followed by to plus infinitive. I promise, and promise is a noun too. So the word promise is a verb and a noun at the same time. I promise to mend my ways. Mend my ways. So the expression, the idiom we have, mend someone's ways. Mend someone's ways means to be a good person, to be better than before. So, to mend, if I say, I'll mend my ways in the future, so it means I'll be better in the future. So, mend someone's ways means become better than before. Okay, but will the prince mend his ways? Okay, let's see. I promise to mend my ways. Yes. The prince returned a changed boy. The prince returned a changed boy. Yes, as you see in the picture, he became a good person. He kept his promise and went on to become a king, a kind king, who was loved by all his subjects. Yes. Okay. Difference, we have the verb returned, which is in the past simple, and it's a regular verb. And we have the verb changed, another verb in the past simple. And kept, another one in the past simple, but kept is an irregular one. Keep, kept, kept. Keep his promise. Yes, this is an expression. And keep someone's promise means to be or to do as he agreed with another. So, the opposite of keep the promise is break the promise. So, some people break their promise, and some other good people, yes, don't break their promise. They keep their promise. So keep the promise is the opposite of break the promise. So don't break your promise. Let's go back. He kept his promise and went on to become a kind king who was loved. Yes, a verb in the passive voice, in the past simple. He was loved by all his subjects. Okay, what is a subject? Subject here, subject means citizen. So, subject means a citizen, and subject means an issue. And subject is, yes, the material that we usually study in or at school. So, school subject, English, Arabic, math, and religion. All of these are school subjects. And subject is an issue. We're going to talk about a specific subject. And subject is a citizen. So, all the people in the country, all citizens, all subjects loved the prince after he had mended his ways. After he had mended his ways. Yes, the prince became a good person and all the people loved him. Okay. So, dear friends, we came to the end of the tale. And we have learned many moral lessons. We learned that we must mend our ways. We must mend our ways. We mustn't be vicious to other people. We must respect the other people. We must respect every creature. We mustn't cut off or rip plants, small plants, as the prince has just done in the story. So we must take care of the plants, we must take care of the animals, everything around us, especially people. We must be kind to them, we mustn't be vicious, and we must mend our ways. We must criticize ourselves from time to time to find if we are good or bad. And as a result, we must mend our ways. Dear friends, we are going to shift to the second part, which is entitled English idioms. And as we have accustomed to doing, in the English idiom, in this part, we are going to deal with some new expressions. Yes, some new expressions and idioms. And we are going to know the meaning of these idioms and expressions. And we're going to take some examples on them. Okay, so take care of every idiom and every expression. The first idiom we have is be a devil. Be a devil. Let's see the meaning of this idiom and let's take an example on it. Be a devil means be brave. Be a devil means be brave. And go on without being frightened. This is the meaning of be a devil. Be brave and go on without being frightened. Dear friends, let's take an example on this idiom to make it clear. Be a devil and try to achieve your mother's wishes. Be a devil and try to achieve your mother's wishes. So, be a devil تعني في اللغة العربية كن شجاعا وتحمل المسؤوليات. Let's deal with another idiom. Yes, the to be. The to be means the future. The to be, the future. Yes. So, We have an example on this idiom to make it clear. Nobody can predict the to be. Nobody can predict the to be. To be or not to be. It's taken from to be or not to be. Yes, the to be means the future, المستقبل. لا أحد يستطيع أن يتنبأ بالمستقبل. Let's deal with another idiom. Yes, might have beens. Might have beens تعني or means past possibilities. Past possibilities. Yes, and we have an example. You didn't make any sense. You didn't make any use of you might. You didn't make any use of you might have beens. You might have beens. So, dear friends, might have beens تعني في اللغة العربية الإمكانيات في الماضي أو احتمالات الماضي. You didn't make any use of you might have beens. ما كنت تمتلك من إمكانات في الماضي. Be all. Be all means whole being. Be all means whole being. Let's deal with this example to make it clear. Yes, a child is the be-all for his mother. A child is the be-all for his mother. Yes. So, be-all تعني في اللغة العربية الكل في الكل. A child is a be-all for his mother. هو الطفل يكون الكل في الكل بالنسبة لوالدته. أفضل شيء أو أهم شيء. Be all. To kick the beam. To kick the beam means to be defeated. To kick the beam. To be defeated. To kick the beam تعني في اللغة العربية أن تهزم. كما في المثال They are completely defeated. They are kicking the beam now. Okay, kick the beam. They are completely defeated. هزموا بالكامل أو تماما. They are kicking the beam now. إنهم يجرون أزيال الخيبة. So kick the beam يهزم أو يجر أزيال الخيبة. Let's deal with another idiom. Bear with. Bear with means be patient. Bear with means be patient. Yes, dear friends, bear is a verb and it's a noun too. So, bear is as a verb means, yes, to bear something, to be able to, yes, to be able to have something bad or deal with something bad or maybe very tiring. Okay, but bear as a noun, it's a kind of animal. Okay, and the adjective is bearable and the opposite of it is unbearable. So, the weather in some countries is unbearable. The weather in some countries is unbearable. The weather in South Africa is unbearable in the summer. So you can't bear it. You can't stand it. So can't bear equals can't stand and the adjective from bear is bearable, and the opposite is unbearable. In addition to that, bear can be used as a noun. It's a kind of what? A kind of animal that lives in the North Pole. Yes, a kind of animal that lives in the North Pole, and it's one of the dog family, Let's go back to see a new, or to learn a new idiom. Bear with means be patient. A teacher must bear with his pupils. A teacher must bear with his pupils. So all of us must bear the things that make us tired and angry. Bear with. Don't forget the meaning of bear with. Dear friends, we came to the end of this episode. Wishing you good luck and hoping you have enjoyed everything in the episode. Hoping you have enjoyed the tale. Hoping you have enjoyed the lessons the moral lessons in the tale, and the new words, the new expressions, and the grammatical rules that we have dealt with in the tale, and hoping you have learned the meaning of every idiom and the example that we have had on each idiom. Wishing you good luck, and bye-bye.